Calling to order the Woburn School Committee meeting for May 10th, 2021. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair and members of the audience, can I please ask for a moment of silence and remembrance for Ms. Janet Bruno, a Woburn Public School educator for many, many years, who passed away recently. May she rest in peace. Thank you.
This is a public meeting of the Woburn School Committee. This meeting is being live streamed by the Woburn Public Media YouTube station. Anyone that does speak to the school committee tonight is being consented to be recorded. Additionally, your face will be recorded as well. Could the superintendent please call the roll?
Ms. Chisholm.
Here.
Ms. Cormier.
Here.
Mr. Lipset.
Here.
Mr. Kissel.
Here.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Present.
Dr. Wells.
Here.
Ms. Crowley.
Present. Moving on, we have two approval of minutes, starting with 4/13/21. Any action?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0. I have minutes from 4/26/21. Any action?
Same action, Madam Chair.
I have a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Aye. That motion passes 7-0. Moving on to our student representatives. I believe I see one.
Hi, Sarah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Great timing. Hope you're ready.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hello. So at Woburn High right now, it is the final full week for seniors, whose last day is May 19th. We had an assembly last Tuesday discussing our senior events, clearing obligations, and all things that we have to get done by that date. Graduation is June 6th, and as of right now, everyone will be there together, distanced on the field, and everyone can bring 2 guests. The 86 seniors who are partaking in internships right now are finalizing their presentations to give next weekend to the juniors as well. The Six Flags field trip that the seniors were going to take unfortunately got canceled, but fortunately 120 almost seniors signed up for the Odyssey cruise, so that is still on. Also, AP exams are being administered to those who take the classes throughout the month of May. The first was the 4th, and the last exam will be administered on May 17th. Grade 10 students are preparing for ELA and Math MCAS, with grade 11 students being able to opt in order to compete for the Abigail Adams Scholarship. Last students, grades 9 through 11, are preparing, or will have move-up day on June 21st, and staff is preparing for that as well.
Great, thank you. I cannot see Sarah's last name from here.
Delano.
Delano. Thank you. Ms. Delano, I apologize for not announcing your name. I really appreciate that report. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Delano? Yes, Mrs. Chisholm.
Move-up day is June 21st? Isn't it the last day of school?
Yes, I believe that's the last day of school for non-seniors, and traditionally we have move-up day on the last day of school.
Ms. Chisholm. Mr. Mulrennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sarah, we had the last couple of meetings. Faith was on board with us. We asked her, I'd like to ask you the same question. What's your most favorite part about being back with all your classmates full time now?
Well, my main friend group has 5 people in it, and unfortunately 2 of them were in cohort B and 3 of us were in cohort A, so it's nice to be able to be with them for the last month of our senior year, all in class together.
And any plans yet for the fall you want to let us know about?
I'll be attending UMass Amherst, studying political science.
Great.
Oh.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice to have an answer, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so relieving.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great answer, wanting to be with your two other friends. That is so nice. And it just,
Yeah.
I don't know about anyone else, that gave me a really nice warm feeling, so. And going to UMass Amherst is pretty awesome, too. Any other questions for Ms. Delano? What is wrong with me tonight? I'm seeing none. Well, thank you so much for coming to our meeting and giving us that report. I want to remind you that you certainly are invited to remain for the duration of the meeting. You can even help us deliberate on any agenda item you see fit. But of course, you're welcome to leave as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to public comment. Again, I do appreciate the public bearing with the school committee. We are asking people to contact the chair if they do want to speak to the school committee, just for safety reasons. I did not have anybody contact me for public comment. So I'll be moving on to reports and presentation of superintendent and staff.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion, we suspend the rules to hear from our athletic director, Mr. Duran, if we could, please. Item D.
Okay, I have a motion to hear Mr. Duran out of order. Any second on that? Any second? Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Aye. That motion passes 7-0. Mr. James Duran?
It should be the furthest distance away. I think we live pretty close.
Mr. Crowley, can you pull up slide 1000?
This is, I did.
Oh, I can't see. Thank you. I just wanted to give an update on spring sports. Well, fall too. That actually went really well. Football, volleyball, swim. So it was a fall too. It was a great. It went really well. We did not have any shutdowns, which was great. But moving on to the spring, we're outdoors now, which makes it a little bit more convenient and comfortable for everybody. The only sport that we have indoors is wrestling. So wrestling would be in the gym. We're not in the wrestling gymnastics room. We're upstairs in the gym. There's only 10 wrestlers. I know it's crazy to say that we're wrestling. They're wearing masks. They probably come off a lot, but we have had a meet and it went well. It seemed like it didn't seem like it. We weren't sure that it was going to go as smoothly as it went, and it went really, really well. Tomorrow we have a meet in Wakefield, which is on the football field, and that's a wrestle meet outdoors. So some are doing that they don't have the area inside. We would have our meets in the gym. Like I said, we only have 10 wrestlers. They wrestle the same person they work out with every day. So we haven't had any issues there. Baseball's going well. Softball, track, we didn't start off with huge numbers, but we're getting there as the season goes on. It seems like we're gaining a couple kids here and there every day. The tennis programs, 2 tennis teams, and both lacrosse teams. We started off real low numbers in girls lacrosse, and now we're getting up there too. I don't know if it's something that what happened, or maybe somebody just thought that they didn't really want to go. This spring, there's a lot of Saturdays, and it's going into the mid-June or late June, some of the games. So I think maybe the kids looked at it and said, is it going to be worth it? And I think they missed it. So we're at pretty good numbers right now, but they are low compared to what they usually are. But that's it. I think the coaches have put in a ton of time, and I know some towns are given differing opinions on what the coaches' roles are, but I think this year for me was the hardest year that I've coached in 25 years. Just on all the protocols and everything you have to do before you get there, and then after leaving it's very difficult. But more importantly, the kids I think it's been a positive thing for them, a real positive thing. They go to practice, and why practice is going on, there's nothing different. And they just want to be there with their teammates, and it's been a very positive experience. So thank you guys for the support, and our administrators at the high school for all their support. It's been a good year.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Kessel had a question.
So this potentially could be, if it's not the best weather, it could be the first rain out at a wrestling meet?
That would be, there's going to be a lot of firsts this year. A lot of firsts this year.
How are the numbers overall? You mentioned the field, girls' field hockey.
Yeah, our numbers are low compared to, like girls lacrosse. So I think the first tryout, I think there was 18 girls there. That's a real low number. I think at times they used to have, 20 girls on a team, and we had freshmen.
Yeah.
So the numbers are really low, but right now we're probably at 26 or 28 girls. So we did gain some when they saw that there might not be a possibility of not having a JV team. It was only going to be varsity. Some of the kids' friends stepped up, and they came out to practice or try out. And I think it's you only have 10 games, but you're playing on Saturdays. There's no transportation. So there's a lot of different variables that go into it. Kids want to work on weekends. Kids want to, do different things. Some of their siblings probably are playing youth soccer or youth, and so it's hard getting people 5 different directions.
And I was going to mention, about the transportation. Obviously, there is none. So it's the parents, it's the kids themselves if they're old enough.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece was, what about the parents at the events? How is that?
So we really haven't, in the spring, we've kind of allowed more. We'd love to see masks, but if they don't, we're just making sure that they kind of social distance. I know it'll be different when they come into graduation. They'll have to have a mask on. And then once they go to their seat and they're with somebody, I believe that they will be able to take their mask off, but that's a lot higher up than me to make that decision. But the parents have been awesome the whole year. I know it's been difficult for them, but I think making it positive at home makes it positive for us as coaches and as administrators.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Dr. Wells?
Yeah, thanks. So are all the teams that normally field the wrestling team fielding them this year?
Everybody has wrestling in the league, correct?
So I just don't understand the thought process in the MIA. Like, I know we spend an enormous amount of time talking about precautions, and not clear to me what the thinking was. I know the MIA is made up of principals and ADs like yourself. Was there any discussion?
They went by the EEA, so that's where they really followed. The MIA really didn't make any decisions except for the EEA. So they made all the decisions on how the rules were going to happen.
But could you just explain? I don't know who the EEA is, and
so basically, what they did was they watched football
yeah,
and how football went all year,
yeah.
and they didn't really have any cases that they thought were coming from the
Right.
teams. It was from outside,
Yeah.
bringing it to the team.
Yeah.
If somebody was a positive case. So basically, they went by the state guidelines of how everything was looked at
Yeah.
on distancing and how they could somehow cohort. And I think that they had so much positiveness with, if that's the correct word, with football that they proceeded with wrestling.
I think it's like a false analogy, football, they're wearing helmets to protect the mask and so forth. Obviously, when you're wrestling, your hands are moving and so forth. It just boggles my mind, essentially. We spend so much time worrying about students, setting up barriers in the school system, and here we're telling the student it's safe to do wrestling. I don't know how we look with a straight face and talk to the kids in the schools and say, you know, you got to wear the mask all the time, you got to stay, you know, apart. It just, and the disappointing part to me is not, you know, much the MIA, it's the principals that are in these meetings, because the principals know what's going on in the schools. And, you know, obviously, you know, once the decision's made, you know, things gets, you know, students don't want to be upset and so forth, but it just boggles my mind.
And I think, like you said, John, I think it comes from the state. There was a state council through the governor's office that kind of pushed this through, so. And I know there was like guidelines way back when, and then they just kept loosening, the same as football.
But we couldn't have swimming indoors.
Right.
But we can have wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was a point in time where we couldn't have track, right? We couldn't have indoor track. We had to have it outdoors.
Right.
And they had to wear masks, and they had to do virtual,
Yeah.
but we could also have football.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a lot of common sense on everything that's happened. I don't think
Right.
anybody has dealt
Okay.
with it. We've dealt with it the best we
Just
could.
like, you know, the only thing I was thinking, you know, we have this testing, all this testing capacity. It would seem logical that that would have been one of the mandates, is that the wrestlers get tested before the match and things like that. But of course, that didn't happen. So, thank you.
Dr. Wells, any more questions for Mr. Duran? Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Durant, I know Chris asked about transportation. Do you think you had 10 kids on a wrestling team, you can't get 10 kids on a bus and shoot them over to Wakefield? Separate them on a bus? I mean,
Yeah,
I know one community's been busing throughout the whole pandemic, but at some point, do you think that'll loosen up like other sports, especially if you have smaller numbers? Or is that, again, above your pay grade?
I think it's above my pay grade, but I think it has worked out. We have moved games to where we can get parents to drive them. And, you know, I think in the long run, I think it might be a little bit of a pain, but I think everybody has chipped in the best they can to get sports off and get them to where they have to be, and they figure it out and they get a ride, or they, you know, find a relative that gets them there. So we have been lucky on that part of it. And we have, like I said, moved the schedule, like try to get most Saturdays where parents can drive on Saturdays, not just the kids, relying on the kids to drive.
Thank you.
Oh, Mrs. Chisholm?
Do you think that the lack of busing stops some kids from trying out?
I do think that has something to it. I wouldn't say it's in all, but I think there's a lot of probably confusion and a lot of, everyone's got a lot of things going on. And it's probably maybe not thinking it through, or just saying, you know, there's no way we can do that, and it happens, and they work it out. And that's probably how we gained a couple of lacrosse girls, on the fact that they were able to find rides, and they were probably concerned about that.
Yeah, I'm sure not every kid has a car that disposable parents have to be working in.
Right.
So I feel bad for kids that, you know,
Yeah.
didn't get out there, that we could have done something for them. And I'm just glad to see kids being back to normal. And, you know, I feel bad for these kids that have to carry those mats, though. Having a kid that,
Oh, the mats are not, you know, you see the new mats, you'd love those.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, I think kids would come back to wrestling.
yeah, but, you know, I'm glad the kids are going back to normal, and hopefully back to school without these crazy things on.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Anything else from the committee?
Just to the
Yes.
Yeah, just, this is to the administration. I think, through the chair, the superintendent, I think you have to look at the rules governing mask usage outside, because we should have a uniform policy. As he's saying, if we're requiring everybody to wear masks, then there shouldn't be an exception for parents at games and so forth. So, you know, I know the state has been in flux with the rules, but I think we should, you know, should set, you know, the policies, and then they should be enforced, whatever determined in consultation with the state and the Board of Health.
Yeah, I'll work with the city, the Woburn
Yeah.
Board of Health on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that something that should go to policy?
No,
to
I think
advise
that's
on
the
policy?
superintendent, I think that's the superintendent's
Okay.
call.
And I think in the league,
Yeah.
we said that there would be masks indoors, and
Yes.
there's no masks outdoors.
Well, that's, as a league, that was what was decided, yes. But since the league meeting, the state keeps moving
Right.
things
Yeah.
around too.
Right.
So,
Yes.
and the CDC changes things.
So we should just have, like, so people are aware what the policies are,
Yes.
especially if we're going to have graduation, and if
Right.
people can, there's all kinds of different policies, so I just think we should just clarify so everybody's on the same page.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Kissel.
So what is, somewhat to this topic, because I was at the high school today, what's the policy for on the school property, the kids coming out of school? and
Wearing a
walking?
mask.
Okay, so that is the policy?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So-
Our student athletes have to wear masks
Yes,
on school property.
okay, that's that.
Yeah,
They kept them on, and I was surprised,
Yep.
but that's great.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if they didn't have to, they just
Yeah,
thought they were
I
wearing
mean, if you see a kid walking down the street, out way beyond school and they don't have a
Oh,
mask
yeah, no,
on,
that's totally
Yeah,
different.
that's different.
But I'm just saying,
you know?
at sporting events, you're saying
Right.
outside, that's weird that they would do that if the school has their own policy of
Mhm. Right.
masks on.
Right.
So, that's a joke.
Yeah, I think maybe we talk about spectators versus students, but the student athletes.
Yeah,
always
they're on
have-
school property, no
Yes.
dogs,
Right.
doesn't matter what time of day, the same thing with masks, if you had all the time
Okay,
during
Yeah.
events.
Thank you.
It's like the no smoking meeting. We
Yeah,
had to-
yeah, it's all the time.
Right, yeah.
all right.
Okay.
So the superintendent will update the school committee on mask wearing outside, especially for graduation. All right. Again, I'm not seeing any more questions. Mr.
Thank you.
Duran, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
On behalf of the school committee, we're just very grateful, like as Ms. Chisholm said, that our kids are playing sports during this time. And I also just want to acknowledge that, thank you for mentioning the coaches and how hard they're working too. So I just want to make, a statement and thank you all the coaches out there that are making the athletics possible during this time. So, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Make a motion to go back to regular order business, Madam Chair.
All right, back.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Aye. The motion passes. So we're back to A, literacy initiative update. Dr. Crowley, did you want to?
Yeah, so if I could just preface, I think we're going to have the coordinators that are here come up together. So
Oh, great.
Courtney Young, Abby Gillis, and Kim Gustenhoven are going to present on the literacy initiative, but also then the innovation pathways. But they put together the presentation so it flows, so rather than fragment it. It made sense to have everyone.
You know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
You all done with the screen, Jimmy?
Yeah, they can use it.
You approved them, yeah.
So if I'm not mistaken, it's starting with Ms. Young and Ms. Gillis.
Yeah, all right. So the last time, I think it was the last time that I was here, I was with Director Ryan from Special Education, and we discussed kind of the tiers and kind of the flow. And then today, Ms. Gillis and I are going to talk about kind of how we came to the decision of kind of our Tier 1 programming that we've been looking at and vetting since January. So we're pretty excited to be where we are, and we'll kind of walk through how we got there and what we've decided upon. So this was really just kind of the work that we've done with kind of looking within special education, the new guidance, as well as the work that we did within our committee. And this kind of just summed up really the work that we kind of have been doing at all the different tiers. So we put together a committee, a literacy advisory committee that went through the process. It had teachers from every building, every grade level. We had coordinators, we had coaches, we had representatives from the special education, from the EL department, as well as all of our elementary administrators participated. And before we kind of went through and looked at programs, we spent a lot of time really developing what our vision for literacy looked like in Woburn. So we went through a process that was a few different weeks, and we spent some time really looking at what literacy meant for Woburn. We looked at different articles, we gathered feedback from staff, we went through a kind of variety of rubrics, and we came to our next slide, which is, I'm not sure if it's really a draft anymore, I think we've really moved forward, but this was really what guided our work, and this really grounded kind of before we went and looked at so many different programs and kind of figured out what was the best decision for us. We kind of really defined what literacy meant as a community. And this was shared kind of with not only kind of in the school, but also with in the community. It went through principals at all of our schools to kind of understand what was guiding the work that we were doing. And I also think too, we've talked about this quite a bit, this is not only kind of guiding the decision we're making now, but it's really guiding the decisions that we're making around literacy moving forward, and kind of all the time. So, yes. So from there, we developed a rubric that we used not only kind of from our Woburn vision, but also from kind of determining what high quality materials look like from the DESE Curate rubric, and kind of came up with a system for how we were going to look at all of our different programs that we were vetting. And then, kind of just to give you an idea, we started kind of in the end of January, and then made our kind of final recommendation with the principals. Kind of just kind of the time that we took into it. We looked through a lot of different programs. We spoke to communities that are using every single one of the programs to understand not only kind of what it entailed, but also kind of the process for implementing it, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly, the reality. And then we had representatives from every single program come in and go through kind of an extensive process, as well as we vetted kind of all of the materials that came in. And it was kind of overwhelmingly, you can go to the next slide, overwhelmingly, we have looked at, we're kind of moving forward with the K-6 programming with Fontes and Pinnell, and our 7 through 8 programming with the units of study. I'm bringing this back. This is what Director Ryan and I had brought kind of when we first looked at the tiers, and we had 2 empty boxes that we've now filled in. But we are looking at kind of where it falls into the pieces that we were needing. So these are just, I won't read it to you, have it in front of you, but just kind of what the comments were from the committee themselves is kind of what made the decision. But really what it came down to was that the program not only aligned with what we currently have, but it also really filled in what we felt like as a committee was what we were kind of missing. It also was kind of thinking about some of the different structures that we put into place, especially around the wind block at the elementary school. This was providing us with the resource and the structure that we really needed to kind of put into place there, as well as it was something that teachers felt like they would be kind of best suited for kind of all learners in their classroom. And really the biggest part too is that it brought in a lot of really, really incredible text, which I believe is what's coming up. But really just a lot of text that we didn't have in our buildings, and we're really excited about. So just kind of as a whole, we're looking at kind of, it provides not only full class instruction, but it also guides small group instruction as well as individual conferencing with students. It follows a structure where students are provided with mini lessons, not only for the whole group, but also for what students individually need. There's a lot of resources around book clubs, which is really important for kind of promoting student talk and discussions. We're not only building materials for independent reading within the classroom, but also building up our book rooms. We spent a lot of time this spring going into all of our buildings and making sure that all of our book rooms have all the same resources. And this is going to really build up that as well as not only kind of high interest text in the classroom, but also a range of decodable and level readers for our youngest learners. So the next page, just to kind of give you an idea, we're looking at kind of at every single grade level. We have around 200 titles of guided reading books that are going to be going into the book room, kind of a range of shared reading, independent reading and book clubs that will be going into all of our classrooms. And then you'll see down here, we kind of go through a range of different interactive read-aloud topics that really guide the work. Here's an example of, I think, a 2nd grade genre study on biography, but it's really providing us with rich text for kind of working with all of our students.
So that then goes into 7 and 8. And so similar slide to the other one as far as why Fontes and Pinnell was chosen, but units of study, some of the big selling points for the teachers were experience. So we have piloted some of these units already in the middle school classrooms, and the teachers that have used these units feel as though it's like strongest thing that they've used, and they really see progress with students when they use it. And then in addition to that, it pairs with our writing workshop. It's the companion piece to the writing workshop that we adopted last year. So that obviously was a big selling point. And then also variety of texts, so very similar to Fountas and Pinnell. The texts, I was telling my staff on Wednesday when we met, that they're going to be swimming in books. We're not going to know what to do with ourselves. It's like me getting like ridiculously excited about the books that are going to be coming and the truckloads of books. So similar slide on the next one about kind of like the instruction. So with Fountas and Pinnell going up through 6th grade, we wanted to make sure that what we adopted for 7th and 8th wasn't going to be whiplash in instruction too. So you want something that's going to bridge really nicely into the 7th grade, and this does. So there's mini lesson component in Fountas and Pinnell, very similar structure with units of study, and it's the same structure that they see in writing as well. And so that's going to just be like that routine for kids, that they're going to know when they're getting the instruction that this is, you know, this is the teaching part, this is the active engagement part, this is where I get to try it out a little bit, and this is where we share. It's the same in the reading and the writing, which is really great. For the materials, like I said, the books, what's really nice about the curriculum is that it focuses on genre study as well, and it comes outfitted with bookshelves for those genre studies. So if you're doing a historical fiction book club, it comes fitted with shelves for that, both on level and some below benchmark too, so you can target some of the students that might need a text that's a little bit more accessible. And then all of the teacher curriculum resources too will be part of this. And then as far as the support, because it's a workshop model, it's really designed to meet students where they are. So for our EL students and for our special education students, it allows the teacher, similar to Fountas and Pinnell, some of that small group, some of that independent, as well as whole class. So it's a really nice fit, I think, with Fountas and Pinnell to then move into that and not be so, wait a minute, what are we doing in 7th grade? This is so weird. And just as like a kind of cherry on top, the high school is doing a lot of conversations around workshop and also looking at our high school curriculum and how we might be able to make it look more similar to what we're doing in the middle school, so that when our students who are currently in middle school begin to come up to the high school, that continuity still feels right. So we have had a lot of those conversations, particularly this year, around that as well. So it is hopefully going to keep kind of progressing up as they go. And then the next slide is just some of the texts. So you can see that the 7th grade class and library has a couple hundred titles, broken down into different kinds of genres, high interest, so contemporary novels, diverse voices are coming into, which has been really important too. And the nice thing about these bookshelves is that they are really intentional about trying to pull in different voices for students. So you can see the breakdown too of some of the book clubs. So you'll get, like, for example, the social issues, you have 30 book club titles, so that's 30 different kinds of books students could choose from within that unit. So it really opens up choice for students as well. They're not married to just one book that everybody has to read, and it might not get all of their interests, or might not be at the right level for all of them, or any of that.
Wow, okay. All right, yes. Would you mind answering some questions from the school committee? Okay, great. Dr. Wells.
Yeah, could you just explain the workshop concept a little bit, expand upon that?
Yep, so workshop is explicit teaching. You start off with the mini lesson, generally 10 minutes. It's not intended to be a very long portion of time, but there's a very specific skill that you're trying to teach the students. You give them that explicit instruction. There's usually like a guided portion of the lesson where you kind of work on that skill together. There's some independent time or small group time or pair time for students to work on it, and then they come back and there's like a share out. So during the small group portion or the small group pairs, that's when the teacher could be going around and either meeting with a couple of students, they could be doing their own kind of small group side, checking in with individual students. So it's supposed to be that students can kind of work at their pace. So if you give that mini lesson and you have a student who got it and can just kind of go sit down and get to work, that's great. That's what that student does. And then you have a student who's still like not quite there. You might do a little bit of reteach. So it's meant to kind of be a little bit more of like a coaching kind of model of teaching, but there's that explicit instruction that starts it off, and then you kind of break out depending on where the kids need you to be for them as a coach.
Okay, thank you. Could you explain the beliefs you had 3 beliefs there, sort of elaborate on them?
Sure. I'm gonna pull up, so I can look at it.
And a lot of this is actually driven, sorry, not to
Yeah,
step on, is
okay.
from when you hear people talk about workshop models, these are a lot of the themes. So it was interesting when we did this kind of conversation with the teachers, that these are what came up, because when you talk about workshop model, what you talk about is giving children time to do the work that you're asking them to do, choice in how they're going to do that, whether it's through choosing the books that they're reading, and then responses to that feedback. There's a constant feedback loop for them. If you want to add.
Sure. So kind of how we got to this place is that we first spent time with staff just kind of working in kind of our small group, determining what are the kind of the components that they would see would kind of get all of our students where we want them to be, not only at the end of the grade level that they're in, but also when they graduate from Woburn Memorial High School. And then we went back and we expanded that out to kind of all staff and kind of put all of these words together and kind of looked at where's the weight, what are the things that we're seeing the most of. And then we went through as a group and we kind of read some of the kind of the most recent research out there around reading instruction, and kind of again looked at what are the things that we're seeing the most of, and then how do those kind of align with the things that we're reading here. And so a lot of it really came down to what we just kind of kept coming back to. And then the vision itself, kind of the part above that, those were developed. We developed a lot of different drafts of it. We did it against a lot of different rubrics. We pushed it out and asked for feedback from all staff. And so it's really kind of these pieces here are the things that we'll go to the top.
So with regard to the choice, and I know the initial aim is to develop children wanting to read. But then at some point, doesn't it have to be sort of a directed reading in the sense that, as you get farther along in your education, you're going to read things that you might not necessarily be the first book you picked up, or some topic that you don't. How do you, how do you walk that line so that by the time they're in high school, they're saying, I've only read the things I wanted to read. Why do I have to read something that's assigned?
Sure. So I think we look at too, like choice is a lot of different things. Sometimes it's the choice of the book. Sometimes it's that everyone's reading the same thing, but the choice is then what they do with the book.
Okay.
Like kind of what is the product that they're going to make is where the choice falls. So, and sometimes choice isn't always necessarily the most kind of the thing that we're focusing on the most. But I think that choice comes in a lot of different ways, and it's kind of just making sure that we're kind of finding the space where that can exist. But I think kind of to Abby's point too, is that I think that we've looked at, and we're right now kind of talking about this component of literacy, but literacy has so many components, especially in our kind of our K1, 2, 3 classrooms. And so this is covering a really big part, but we also have, foundations that's covering the phonics piece. So there's a lot of different pieces. This is really the kind of the next layer that we were kind of adding on.
And I will say too, within when you're thinking about choice, like social issues book clubs, for example, that's pretty much all realistic fiction that they'll probably read within that.
Yeah.
So you're introducing them to different genres. So you might have a student who would never pick up historical fiction, but you're going to do a historical fiction book club. So you have to, but within historical fiction, these are 4 or 5 books that you can choose from. So you're still going to do that genre. You're still going to have to be developed, introduced to it, and then you might find something that you really like and you take off in your reading life. And so it's that exposure, along with the fact that there's a core text embedded.
Yeah.
So if you're doing like contemporary literacy for right now, I know the core text is Pride, which is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, but contemporary. It's set in the Bronx. Gentrification. It's really good. It's really good. But they're reading that book together as a whole group. So you still have that whole class component where there's something that you're going to have to engage in, but then they have on top of that independent choice, so that they can practice those skills in an independent book. So it's kind of also increasing the stamina too, because they have multiple texts that they're working with. So they will still have that exposure to a whole class novel that might be similar in high school too. But I will say the high school is looking at kind of stepping away from just doing whole class novels and being a little bit more open-minded too. So if we're getting them kind of into that frame, in high school it will be a little bit more normal, I guess.
But is that, I guess, is that the way further educate, if we're doing it at a high school, we're preparing students for other things, is that the best way to prepare them where there's not one novel and so forth that they're all reading. I don't know, with college education and further, is that the way of the future, I guess? Are we preparing them for what to expect, or are we preparing them for what we think is nice?
Well, I think that, one of the reasons that choice is pushed so much is that students will tend to read above kind of their level of where they are when they have the choice and the interest in what they're reading. And so a lot of reason for the choice is that it's actually pushing students' reading levels up. And so I guess when I look at, the big picture, our goal when they leave us is that they're able to access the text that they're getting at a college level. And the way we do that is finding the places in the classroom to get them to raise their reading level. I think too, again, to what we said, I think it's that there is, balance within certain places.
And then I know you spent a lot of time mapping out things that students are supposed to learn. And is it much more difficult with hundreds of books and making sure that they cover certain aspects of literature that you've mapped out? And, how is that working? I guess it just seems hard to do. It's easy when you have a few texts because you can obviously cover the aspects. But
yeah. So I think a lot of it comes down to the unit we have right now, which is on point of view.
Mhm.
We're still teaching point of view. We're still teaching the standards. We now just have so many more books
Okay.
and so much better perspective to teach it.
okay.
And one of the nice things about that too is if you are doing a lesson on point of view and you have students in different texts and they can say, well, in my book, this is what's happening, and then all of a sudden, a student on the other side of the room goes, that sounds cool. And it allows for a little bit more of like that community idea of reading as well, so it's not just like a singular kind of activity.
Okay. And are you going to track which books are read and which ones aren't?
Yeah, so a lot of what we've done, a lot of what we've been doing is kind of looking through what already exists in our book rooms and kind of what are the texts that we feel like are kind of what are the ones that have been pulled out a lot and what are the ones that we're not seeing as often. And then a lot of the work that, and kind of when we look at the structures that we've built, our content specialists are going to be, pivotal members of the implementation of this. And so there's a lot of pieces that they'll be tracking and mapping and kind of looking at from a district standpoint. So certainly.
And then just out of my own curiosity, could we get a list of sort of the titles?
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. Hold on.
Are you sure, Dr. Wells?
I was going to say, that's a good one. It's fun.
Yeah, I like.
Yeah, okay.
Who is next? Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief.
Me saying I wasn't?
One of your early slides, ladies, you show stage 3 of the draft was shared with community stakeholders for their feedback. Who might that be?
We shared it with out with every single at every single elementary school and through the middle school newsletters, and then the principals discussed it kind of at their building level with families.
Nothing in the community as far as like the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA agencies, or perhaps the public library, or is it just still internal to the school system right now?
I believe that we've shared it, but I can double check.
Yeah, we shared it with the Boys and Girls Club and the Y,
Yeah.
and part of that reason was because of the,
Yes.
Extended learning
extended
centers.
As I
program.
say, I feel like it has, but you can
Yes,
certainly
it
check
has.
that and make sure.
That's kind of like I was figuring that must be what it's for, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd just like to make sure it gets shared by those agencies, because I'm sure they'll be all over this kind of stuff, so, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulrennan. Any further? Yes, Mr. Lipset.
Just a couple things, and first I just really want to commend you on the process that you put together for this. The amount of feedback that you were gathering from students, from teachers, from community alike it's fantastic, and it's clear from that the program that you've chosen is the correct one. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, it's clear coming through there. I saw the word flexibility a lot, alongside choice, and I think those are, especially with literacy, in order to develop that love of reading is so critically important. And so to see that over and over again is great. Could you talk a little bit about, go a little bit more in depth in terms of how you see, especially Fontes and Pinnell, connecting with some of the programs that we already have in place? The wind block, and it might be beneficial to remind people what the wind block is, but foundations, writers workshop.
Yes. So one of the reasons I think that we came to this program is that what we currently had in place in terms of foundations, which is covering kind of those foundational reading skills, was that we didn't want to have to kind of undo anything that was going really well. And so a lot of the reason that this kind of rose to the top is that it fit in really nicely, and it was not going to require us to make any changes to what we kind of already have going that's working well. So in our K1, 2, and then adding on to our third grade, we'll have the foundations block, which will be the kind of that focused word study time. We've also added onto that block an additional phonological awareness component with Hegarty, which is what Director Ryan and I had talked about in our K and 1 classrooms. And so that's really kind of a targeted 30-minute block. And then we have the literacy block that attaches to that, which is where Fontes and Penelope live. And that's going to be kind of those shared reading experiences, the space for students to be conferencing, because I think a lot of parts of this and what we know best about students learning is when they feel like they have a relationship with their teacher. And so what kind of this program does is it fosters that connections through books that they're reading and kind of that time with teachers. And so that's kind of the big picture. The WIN block, which is where we address students' intervention needs, but also their enrichment needs. This has a very comprehensive guided reading component to it, which allows us to be providing kind of targeted groups at students' levels. And so this will be providing a ton of support in that area. But that's also kind of looking at their students who are ready for that component of reading. And then we also have the space during that WIN block for students who need to be doing more intensive kind of foundations work. And so the big piece of this is that Fontes and Pinnell does provide their own phonics, but you don't need to do it in order to implement the program. And so we're able to kind of not do that part and have foundations replace it. A lot of other programs, we would have had to get rid of foundations in order to use the entire program. And so that was a very big part of kind of that decision.
That speaks again to the flexibility.
Yes.
Talk a little bit more, and it's possible that it's at such the beginning stage that there's nothing more to say. But in terms of how you see this leading into high school curriculum, what kind of work has maybe already been done in that area?
Yep. So for the high school, what we're actually going to be talking about this coming Thursday at our meeting is looking at, we've noticed, so we started Atlas 5-6 years ago. And so we can, I always say if I could go back to like 6 years ago and be like, you're doing it wrong, like just save yourself a lot of, but it took us a couple of stops and starts to feel like, okay, now we know where we are. And a lot of the high school staff has said to me too, like, I get it now. Like and they're starting to actually look a little bit more critically at how we scoped out certain things and saying like, there's some repetitiveness that we need to really kind of cut down on, because it's like, the 9th grade teacher is next to the junior teacher and they're like, wait a minute, I'm doing that right now with my juniors. Why are you doing that? And it's like, but I'm in this unit. And we're like, oh no, they're too close. Like we need to make more nuance. So one of the things I brought up from the middle school was I showed them like the writing progression. And so in writing, if you are in 6th grade for narrative, you're doing a personal narrative. In 7th grade, you're writing realistic fiction. And then in 8th grade, you are doing a combo narrative information writing unit, which is journalism. So they kind of figure out how you can use narrative in journalism writing, but also how you use information writing. So it's a really cool progression. You're doing the narrative standard, but they're not every year writing about their summer, right? Because then that happens in the high school. They come in and we're like, well, we have to do narrative, so you're going to write, something about your favorite person or whatever, and it's personal narrative, and then they get to write their college essay junior year, and it's like same thing. It just feels like, so what in showing them how you kind of differentiate within that, a lot of them are like, this is really cool, I like this idea. So we're going to have the conversation about how we can add more nuance into our 9th through 12th grade. Also talking about the possibility of electives, so you might have a lot in that November meeting where you approve them next year. There'll be a lot of new ELA classes coming your way.
Can't say she didn't warn you.
The program of studies might get totally ripped apart. Jess probably won't be happy about that. But we're just trying to revive it a little bit too, because it's pretty stale. But by looking at how the progression goes at the middle school, I think it also allowed a lot of the high school teachers to go, oh, this seems really cool, and like energizing them. So we're going to have a conversation about what that might look like. Obviously not for next school year, but the school year following. And I've had some teachers attend. So for units of study. There are some really great PDs that have only been offered up through 8th grade in the previous years through Teachers College, and it's all workshop based. They started offering stuff for 9th grade as well. So they offered a book club PD, 3-day PD, and it was 9 through 12, so high school teachers could. So I had a junior teacher that participated in that, and she really understood workshop after that, and was like, yeah, I've been doing it wrong. Like, we need to do this. Then I had another teacher that went to a writing workshop, 3-day PD, through Teachers College as well. So they've kind of started experiencing it as well and feel like it would be a better fit, especially for our 9 and 10 students. And then maybe in 11, 12, we can kind of broaden our electives. So that's how some of what we've been doing at the middle school has kind of led into the conversations at the high school.
That sounds great. Thank you. And just one last question. I mean, I'm looking at the book list, which looks awesome, and I would love the book list as well. It seems to offer a lot of opportunities for interdisciplinary study and connections. And I'm wondering if there are, sort of long-term thinking about sort of more institutionalizing that kind of connection.
Yes, absolutely. So I have the 2 STEM coaches right now going through a lot of the kind of the units that are coming, and looking at where they fall within Atlas and kind of adjusting some of the maps, kind of already thinking about that. But absolutely, I think that the way to get through all of the content that we have, especially at the elementary level, is by combining them. And so I think another kind of, again, one of the reasons that kind of on the rubric I kept going there was that piece, that it was going to help teachers support other areas and maybe release some time in their schedules throughout the year where they could start to get some other things in.
And the writing actually prompted some they collaborate anyways, but some more pointed collaboration between ELA and history in 8th grade, because the last writing unit for them is like a research argument. And so the English teacher was like, okay, we can start this part of it and then hand it off to the social studies for the civics project.
Awesome.
Because they have to have that component for the civics project. So, 2 of the teachers at the 8th grade and one of the schools sat down and kind of hammered out like what would make sense for like the handoff. So some of those conversations have started interdisciplinary.
It's fantastic, and it's all fantastic, and thank you so much for working through all of it with us.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lipsett. Any more questions from the committee? Yes, Dr. Wells.
Yeah, so this will be instituted starting next year, is that the plan?
So we're working right now on finalizing the implementation plan.
Okay.
We know for sure that we're going to be I'm doing some info sessions with staff over the next few weeks to kind of go over it and answer any questions about the process, the program, all that good stuff. And then we're going to be kind of first and foremost having some teachers kind of step forward as model classrooms, kind of building places where staff will be able to go and kind of see it in action right away. So we're definitely going to do kind of a phase over the year. But I already had teachers emailing me today telling me that they, without even knowing what they were signing up for.
And then the assessments, so how effective these programs are, you have to change your assessment process, or are you using the same assessment?
So the beauty of, again, kind of the flexibility of this program, and another part of what it is that our current assessment tools, both the DIBELS and the DRAs, correlate with the program and do not require us to shift assessment tools.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something before science starts?
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
So, sort of as an add-on to all of this, Ms. Young and I also worked, if you remember, about a year and a half ago, the SOA came out from the state and we were supposed to write a plan.
Student Opportunity Act.
Yes, student opportunity.
There's too many acronyms.
Yeah. So we wrote it for early literacy, and as a result of that, we were offered the opportunity to apply for a competitive grant, which Ms. Young and I did, and we were awarded that grant. And through that grant, we're able to fund the 3rd grade foundations, the geodes for 2nd grade, PD through Melissa Orkin, and for foundations for 3rd grade, as well as stipend teachers, a couple of teachers to work on what we called a literacy connection planner. And the idea behind that is to have, between now and the summer, have a calendar of events for next school year that each school can implement for families, to support families in early literacy and supporting student learning at home.
That's great.
We haven't gotten there yet, but we will. But I think that's an important piece because it does help support all the kids.
Could we get a calendar sort of, outlining, they're going to introduce it in classroom, so we sort of know the progression, so when we're following it over time, we know where it's at?
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
have a document that I can share.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Save two.
I think we're ready for science, or is there any more questions on ELA?
So,
Finally, the humanities came.
Ms. Gustenhoven, you're up.
So I wanted to tonight talk to you about Innovation Pathways, where we started briefly and what we're planning for the future. So we got our designation a year ago around this time, and we joined 42 other schools across the state that are also designated as Innovation Pathway high schools. And what I've done in the last year is, right, I know, Mr. Alpinado's ready to kill me. Just saying.
All good.
Bringing in money is always good.
Yeah, he can handle it.
We've been writing a lot of grants because to put the advanced manufacturing and biotechnology into place requires a great deal of equipment, and that's where the majority of our costs will come. It's not so much the teaching end. We have people that have been in our career changers, so they actually are coming from the industry, so they have an excellent background to teach the courses. But it's mainly to get the equipment in the door. So we have 8 grants that we've achieved. We started off with a planning grant, which we have completed, and we're in the process of completing the implementation grant, which is primarily focused on materials. Originally, it was focused on transportation of students to work sites, all these other aspects, but I asked the Department of Education if we can move it to materials since we weren't allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So they were gracious enough to do that, so I have a little more money in that grant to actually go to expenditures for equipment. We have 2 PLTWs, Project Lead the Way, and that's a curriculum we've contracted with basically to do parts of our pathway at the high school. So we have an engineering grant with them, and the money there goes to the curriculum, buy the supplies for their curriculum. It helps to pay for professional development. It funds, like we put in all new computers in the engineering lab this year. That was another thing we paid for with it. So everything has to go to the engineering classes. We have engineering essentials, that's a Project Lead the Way, and we have introduction to engineering design. That also is the other course the money goes towards. We just received the biomedical grant. We won't have the money till the summer, but that's to buy the equipment for the biotechnology courses. We have principles of biomedical science for our freshmen. Then they will go to human body studies, and that money in that grant goes to those 2 Project Lead the Way courses next year. We received a Cummings grant and the Skills Capital, again, focus more on equipment. We're putting in the high school 2 level 1 water systems. Basically, it's distilled water because the biotech and the AP Bio use, they need distilled water to do the laboratory experiments because the tap water would have contaminants in it, which would throw off the DNA work that the kids are doing. And then last week, we got the 2 Gateway grants, and that's Project Lead the Way in the middle school. They call it Gateway. And so there'll be $25,000 for both middle schools to start to implement those units, which I'm going to show you in a minute. Okay, what's next? Oh, my breaking news. Yeah. This morning, we received a $6,000 grant for sustainability for our 2 high school programs. So it'll help pay for some PD and our fees that go along with implementing the curriculum. So before you go crazy, we'll change that slide. I just had to put it in
Yeah.
because it was so serious. So we've been doing our outreach. I don't know if you guys saw this on 93 northbound, our innovation pathway. We put this up before, during, and a little bit after middle school registration, primarily to focus on our 8th grade kids so they would know about the pathways, and we would remind the parents every time they went home from work to discuss it. So we've been doing a lot of outreach, and that will certainly pick up in the coming school year because we will be able to hopefully get together again. We have industry partners, we have families, we have students involved. We've got, we just started a teachers, Innovation Pathway Teachers Committee, so we've brought middle school and high school teachers together to do the vertical alignment that, like Abby was talking about in English, so that they will be getting a taste of the Innovation Pathway courses, the style of teaching prior to progressing to the high school. So when they get there, they won't be totally stumped. So, and what else? I guess that's okay, we're good. So I just wanted to show you, this is like a 10-second film. These are the kids this week doing DNA research.
All right, you can try to, that's amazing, Ellie. Let's see.
So they're extracting DNA. That string
Can you see what it looks like?
is actually DNA from a strawberry.
That's so cool.
It's so cool. It is so cool. So I know they were wondering what the Stop and Shop bill was for lots of strawberries. Just saying that's what it was for.
I got that one,
You
John.
smashed them all up. You're gonna get that bill.
That'll get waved through.
But that's the kind of thing they're doing. They're looking at PCR, and you probably know that, those 3 letters from COVID. They're doing experimentation with that in the high school now, in our biotech course. They're doing preliminary CRISPR labs with DNA. So that's why we need all the equipment to come in, because that level of experimentation requires very specific equipment to be able to do it. Okay, next slide, please. So how did the games of Project Lead the Way? It developed over time. This whole thing just snowballs. You know, it started out with something small and now it's great. But I was exposed to this through the Department of Education and a lot of trainings that I went to for innovation pathways, and I met other schools that were using the programming. It's all hands-on, and it's related to the real world, the current experiences kids can have. It forces them to do critical thinking, higher order thinking. And we found that student-centered piece is very important. So the pictures here are, this is in our Principles of Biomedical Science. We're learning how to draw blood, phlebotomy. And we purchase arms that have vessels in them, and they teach that. So you can see the apparatus with the blood going through, and they have to learn how to insert the syringe and how to draw blood. So
I had to use an orange.
those kind of experiences. We're looking at college and career. There may be kids out there that want to be a phlebotomist. Maybe they don't want to proceed the college route, but they want to go and get a job. And we want them to be able to have the training and the technology background to be able to go and do and get that certification as soon as they exit high school. So, or if they're going into nursing, they'll have seen it before they get there. It's always good to have that experience. So, the programming, there is a program for the elementary kids as well as middle and high school, but we're concentrating here on the middle school. The units are 9 weeks in length, and I'm going to show you what the kids will be having. And those prepare them. We have the biomedical science and the engineering piece at the moment, those 2 sets of programs. Who knows, computer science may be coming. The wheels have been turning. So sixth grade, starting next year, is going to be exposed to design and modeling unit. And this involves the kids using the engineering design process. And they go through a series of practicing, and then the final product is to create a therapeutic toy for a child with cerebral palsy. So at the end of 9 weeks, they will have gone through all of that, using their computers. You can see them grafting there to create that toy. So they'll be working in teams. It's collaborative. That's the other plus. It really fosters the collaboration, because in the sciences, you're not working solo. There's a lot of people in the team. Seventh grade is going to be computer science for innovators and makers. So they're going to be using computers, learning how to implement hardware, software, how those blend together to create the programming that they will be using in computer science if they choose to take that as they move on in science. And grade 8 next year, this is the really fun one. I think it's really fun. Automation and robotics. So they're actually going to look at the energy transfer that's involved in machines like this, and programming, and actually building a robot. They're going to do some other things like learning how to program traffic lights. So now we know who to blame when we sit there for 10 minutes pushing ours with turning. So those kind of control systems, they're going to learn how to program that. So that was next year. This is the rollout. The year after, we'll be adding one more 7th grade program, Green Architecture, which focuses on, just like its name says, architecture, using like solar, wind power, and designing the home so that the use is not polluting and that kind of thing. Flight in space, rockets, are in that. And then the following year, 8th grade will have app creators, or actually will be creating apps for computer programming. And the last one is medical detectives. And in that, they solve like a forensic mystery, knowing about diseases and how that all pieces together. So by the end of 3 years, this is the 3-year rollout, we have the 6th grade will start and have 1 course. The 7th grade will have 2, and 8th grade will have 4 in the end of 3 years. Okay. That being said, so looking forward for the high school, we're going to continue to update our lab equipment, also to apply for grants that give us sustainability of the programming we have. The one plus is that we will be able to get most of our equipment, and then it's just consumables that we'll have to replace, and we do that on a yearly basis anyway. So that's kind of already figured into the mix. We'll be creating the Capstone project. That's the culmination of the Innovation Pathway students. They have to do a capstone or an internship, and we've selected at this point Capstone. They'll have connection to our industry partners who will work as mentors on the Capstone project itself. They could have internship possibilities. They will be panel discussion people. They'll be interfacing with our students to bring that real-world experience into the building. And we have some new courses as well for next year. I don't want you to have a heart attack tonight. There's cybersecurity. There's a drone program run by the Federal Aviation, the FAA runs that one, and I've talked to them already about coming in. They actually will certify your students to fly drones. And the cybersecurity, and what was the other one? I can't remember. Anyway, so we've got some ideas cooking for the future. And those ideas could lead to the next thing, which is the development of another pathway in the computer science piece. And at the Kennedy and the Joyce, I'm psyched to get this started. We have STEM scopes, but now we will have just that little bit more that they will be exposed to, which really, this is their future. Understanding this technology, being excited about it, knowing a little bit about a few things just so they can make decisions in the future. we have STEM Week coming up. It's the 18th through the 22nd of October, and I got an email today from the company that sponsored us 2 years ago, where they supply all the curriculum and the supplies for free because they're sponsored by corporations. All we have to do is show up, so we will be. We'll continue to interface with the high school. We're going to be we're working on videos of our actual classes so that the kids can stream in and watch what the high school kids are doing in a lab and get a little exposure. We have a try it day where they're going to come in and take a lab with the teachers that would be teaching it. So they come in and do something with DNA, or whatever, with the biotech teacher. And really start to get the middle school interfacing with the high school students, because it's word of mouth. And if the kids are excited about it, then the 8th graders will be excited about it. And finally, and this is totally in its infancy, after-school programming for the middle school kids. We have a science team at the high school, but we have nothing here. And a couple parents have asked me about it, so it's percolating. I'm going to be working on it. Stand by, Dr. Crowley. It's coming.
I trust you.
That's it. I feel like, I think my other slides on there, it's very, very important on the science and technology to get these kids interested early. We've got to start in middle school. We're starting a lot sooner than that, but I see the middle school that we need a little boost and get them excited about science and technology, because it really, career-wise, especially in Massachusetts, the options are just tremendous. In a lot of, not only in the ancillary supporting staff, but in the PhD level staff. So a lot of great things for their futures.
Awesome. Just before I invite Dr. Wells to ask a question for the next half hour, I was just wondering if at some point maybe the school committee could do like a little tour of the science classroom. I know it's like right now is not the best time, but I would love to see the science in action. Just to get a sense of what's happening in the high school level.
You'd only taken the lab that you were supposed to be in when I was teaching.
Yeah, the kids are great. They would love to have people see what they're doing.
Yes. That would be great.
And the forensics kids, you never know. They might be outside. We've had a crime scene right out in the front of the high school for taped off with crime tape and organs. Left behind. We're thinking about maybe putting a body farm on the roof. These things, you never know. It's up and coming.
I want to see the minutes for that. No, just the point of the tour would just be to support all the work that you're doing, really single-handedly. Just to see what equipment you're choosing and like see the kids working together. I just think that would be a great school committee moment. So, thank you. All right, Dr. Wells.
Yeah, so I think I recall when the original program was developed, one of the functions was to get underrepresented students involved, and I don't know how successful has that been.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the priorities for Innovation Pathways. Therefore, students don't have to have a specific GPA.
Right.
Everyone is welcome. So we currently have 2 classes of the biomedical programming and 1 class of the engineering, and I could get you the numbers on what the breakdown is. But
because it's kind of, it seems to me, it's a difficult you want to open it up to as many students, but I can see students that are highly focused on science and math and engineering gearing towards it. And how do you introduce students that maybe haven't experienced it and still have the same level of rigor in the classroom? I think could be a really complicated.
Well, that's why we want to get the programming down into the middle school, so that they do get a taste of it and see what it is, and not to be afraid of it. You don't have to be fabulous at it. It's fun to do, and anyone can do it. We have the support systems in place if they need someone to support them with English language, or if they need someone to support with a special education piece. We have that in place at the high school to support those kids.
Yeah.
And I know certainly at the Joyce, they have plenty of special ed people around.
And I think your idea of directing this so that people know that they're a support level position that don't require advanced education. And, you know, I think that's one of the things we're all struggling with the vocational system and so forth, is where do we have the students that maybe don't want to go on to college, so forth, how do we educate them? So I think
That's right, and like with the advanced manufacturing,
Right.
we're working with a company right here that's like a mile from the high school. The only bugaboo with manufacturing is you can't be on the manufacturing floor unless you're 18. That's not our code as
Right.
a state and federal, for safety reasons. But there are other ways they can be exposed to the action that's happening, and using some of the equipment. So that is our hope, and I'm working with Joanna Dowling to make that happen for our kids, kind of like a dual enrollment.
Yeah.
Kind of do that.
And
So-
how are the course, you know, you're talking about the middle school level, are they going to fit into their blocks of time? Is there going to be adequate time? Are we going to have to adjust the blocks to have, you know, some of these activities? Some of them seem they take maybe longer than a traditional class time. And
Well, I've worked with the Teacher Technology at the Kennedy, and we have worked it that he is going to be, the technology teachers are going to kick this program off. They will be doing it next year. It fits in with their curriculum. We selected those units this first year that specifically interface with what we were already teaching and what was required by the state. So that way we're enhancing what we already have. It won't have to be a new time slot. So that's why we selected those three. We've worked pretty closely, he and I, together this year.
You should just track that, because there's nothing worse than doing a project and you either rushed at the end, you know, you don't get the same satisfaction out of doing it. So,
That's right.
you know, we are looking at the middle school time slots and how much is allocated and so forth, so that would be good.
Yeah, in the future, it would be great to have a little more time, but we've sat down and worked it out so that we could fit it in, and that was part of applying for those grants. That's one of the criteria that, you know, they have enough time to do the material that's in. We can modify to a certain extent, but the major guts of it, we have to be able to perform in the time slot.
And are those grants, are they all time limited in terms you have to spend the money in X amount of time?
Yeah, the Project Lead the Ways are spread over 2 years.
Okay.
The Cummings is 4 years. Skills Capital is June of this year, and so is the implementation grant June of this year. So some of them are doled out over a period of years. Yeah.
And so just jumping to the high school again, those classes that do they have like a sequential follow-up, so that, say, if the students take the 2 that are currently there, is there a next stage, because that's only 2 of 4 years of the high school?
Yes. What we've done is this is the freshmen of the first year now. We've put the sophomore courses in, so they will be taking those. When they get their junior year, we'll have added those. So we're kind of working with them through the process, and then that'll be in place. As they progress, so too will the courses. Yeah, it's mapped out what we will be teaching. They just don't see it in the program of studies because that would become way too confusing. So they don't know what we know.
And then the other thing is, have we provided adequate training and opportunities for training for the teachers? Because there's nothing worse than trying to teach something that you're not comfortable with.
You cannot teach the Project Lead the Way courses without taking their training.
Okay.
It's mandatory. So the teachers that have signed on with this, typically it's in the summer because some teachers are parents of young children, can't go to WPI for 2 weeks in the summer. This year worked out, it went virtual. And they were able to, Project Lead the Way spaced it out throughout the school year. So they've been in classes for 10 weeks. learning right along with the kids.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just have that breakdown for the classrooms?
Sure.
and-
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mr. Kissel?
Yeah, well, you covered most of my stuff. I've been crossing.
I was reading your.
So obviously the Cummings grant and most of the grants are spread out over time, which is what I was going to ask. Is any of the grant money replacing anything that's been budgeted for? Is this all kind of new stuff, extra stuff that expands on what we have?
It expands on what we have, and it also is paid for. We've repaired all our pipettes. That was $4,000. It came out of the grant. So they will pay for repair of equipment. Stuff like the pipettes are pretty fragile, so they can suffer during the class period. That and the microscopes are all being cleaned, and the objectives being replaced if they need to, if they're scratched or whatever. So in addition to buying the new microscopes, we're going to bring the others up to date.
And again, that would have been something in our budget, or we would have capital over time to clean and so on.
Right.
So that's offset.
It would have come out of my high school.
Right.
Yeah.
I would have had to figure out that piece would have to go to that job. but now
Just
it's
a quick
solved.
estimate, won't hold you to it. What would you say that number is? That you don't, you're not spending because of these grants? I put you on the spot.
Good question. Quite a bit. Thousands of dollars.
Okay.
Because, like I said, just to repair the pipettes was $4,000. That wasn't even purchasing anything new. That was just fixing the ones we had. So the upkeep of some equipment can be very costly. Also, the equipment that will be in the manufacturing area, that has to be tuned.
Yeah, okay.
And the water systems that we're putting in, we paid for within the grant money, for them to come in and keep everything up to date for the next couple of years. And we figure we'll stand behind them and watch what they're doing, so we're ready to do it after they're done.
Yeah, great. Thanks. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. Anything else? Mr. Lipsick, did you have something?
Dr. Rose took my question.
He usually does.
He's taken all of mine the rest of the school year. Mr. Mulrennan.
Thank you. I again will be brief. One of your earlier slides, maybe you brought it up when you first introduced this program to us. You stated that we were one of 42 schools in the state. And I think perhaps, Dr. Wells hit upon the students that are going to be enrolled or should be enrolled. 42 schools in the state. Again, we talk each and every meeting how great Woburn is, and check that box, whether it's, the Yale literacy program, the special ed programs that we're running. But here we are, there's a nice picture of some pretty important people here. I see yourself and some school administrators. But 42 schools, and why Woburn? Did they ever tell you?
Well, it's quite a process. It takes about a year to get the designation. It's a series of application steps, interviews, and planning. Jess Callahan and I, when we found out about it, we said, do we want to do this? If we want to do this, then I had to sit down and write the first part, explaining that we wanted to do this. And we have a lot of the pieces. We have a lot of courses in science and technology at the high school, and this really just took them and organized them.
I see.
So we didn't have to go out and develop all these new courses. We really didn't have that much on that end to do. We had the pieces, we just had to put it together. And so through, the process is over months and applications to the net. If you succeed in Part A, you get invited to do Part B. Part B leads to C. I think I sent you a text message on Part A. I was in another building. Yeah, we got it. Yeah, so it's quite lengthy, and then you go down to the Department of Education and you meet with the people that run the program for them, and they ask you all about what you're planning to do and how you're going to make that happen, and then you wait to hear.
Great.
So it was very exciting because I think it is. We looked at the kids graduating, and we know that there are kids that graduate that don't have something to go to. If they don't want college, they don't know what they want to do. And this is an opportunity to help them get enough exposure to maybe have a feel for what they'd like to do. And the governor's in that picture because this and the lieutenant governor himself are the driving force behind this, because they realized it as well.
And I think,
that's how it developed.
to Mr. Kissel's point as well, I know some of us still call it the new Woburn Memorial High School, but infrastructure-wise, both the high school, Kennedy and Joyce building structure, infrastructure, going to be able to support some of these new initiatives as well, other than the equipment, and just
Yeah, I mean,
spaces.
Space is at a premium. We have 4 lab rooms, so you have to schedule to get in. Yeah, we'll put that in another grant in a couple of years. I think
Bob took note of that already.
The Cummings Foundation might give some space somewhere. Yeah, we're going to need eventually some space. I haven't lost thought on track of that. But I definitely would approach Cummings after this for that purpose.
If I can just jump in, I forget the district off the top of my head, but back when we started this a few years ago, there is a district or a couple districts that have innovation hubs outside of the school. So you almost contract with a
Company or
a building, and you make it an innovation hub, so the kids at Woburn would be bused or walk or whatever and go to that hub for this program. And it's all part of the high school curriculum.
Do it for sports. Talk to Mr. Cummings, they got so much lab space.
Burlington has pathways,
Right.
Danvers has pathways,
Right.
Peabody has pathways.
But there is an investment certainly to creating that, but once created, then it can become part of the.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
right now we have a professional learning community that meets monthly. I meet with them, and it's all schools like ourselves. Some are in the first year, some are in the second year, but it's a meeting of the minds, so to speak, to help each other over some of the pitfalls, especially when you're in a public school versus a private kind of program. It's a whole different ballgame. So, but yes, we did talk about that way back when.
Yeah, right, yeah.
way back when.
Blast
How
from
is
the
in our
past.
future?
Right.
Some of this was in the future way back when.
Well, this
Great
is
work.
the future
Thank
way
you.
back when. You're right, and here we are.
Mrs. Chisholm, you had something?
Yeah, I just want to say, I just want to thank all of you for your enthusiasm and your dedication to our students. I mean, it truly shows how much that you do for our kids on a daily basis, and all this planning, and you make it seem like it's nothing. I know the hours that you do at home and off hours, and grant writing, you make it sound like we did 1, we did 2. I mean, the hours that you spend, and we do appreciate everything that you do. And bringing some excitement to the classroom for these kids is going to be great.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Bye, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chisholm. Dr. Wells?
I wanted to thank the administration and the presenters for covering the middle school tonight. It's usually our leftover we don't ever hear about, so it's great to hear the activities going on at the middle school. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anything else from the committee? Dr. Crowley, did you want to?
I'm glad, candidly, that you both addressed it. I wanted to say thank you because I think the most excited person in the room is actually Bob, because he's not doing the budget tonight. Genuinely, the enthusiasm is palpable, and the work that's happening each and every day over the past few years through a pandemic hasn't stopped. And I really feel so genuinely fortunate to be in Woburn because we're going to provide new things to students. We're not just going to hit the reset button. We're thinking forward. And I think tonight's presentation was also evidence of the role of the coordinator, because what you heard was that there is a bridge between the middle and the high school. So there's communication that's occurring. Teachers are now collaborating in ways that they were not necessarily, and just to have that vertical articulation leads to, when students leave Woburn Memorial High School, to whatever they choose to do we're doing our best to prepare them for their future. So I do appreciate all that you did and the way you did it. I didn't see this in advance, so I'm also very, very grateful and appreciative of your efforts. So thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Have a good night. What's left of it.
A ride home.
Okay. Vote on. All right, so every year, the school committee has to vote on whether or not it will enroll in the school choice program, which by definition is allowing kids that do not live in Woburn to attend the Woburn Public Schools. And every year, we have to decide whether or not we're going to enroll in that program. So does the administration have a recommendation about whether or not we should enter school choice?
I do have a recommendation. I think based on the uncertain enrollment figures for this past year, I would not recommend school choice for this upcoming year because we really have no sense of how many students are coming or going. And so I would recommend maintaining the current status of not allowing school choice.
Okay.
Make that motion on the superintendent's recommendation, Madam Chair.
Second. Okay, any
On the motion?
Yeah.
No, I agree with the superintendent, but I'm thinking maybe next year or the year after, I'm trying to figure out why some communities do it and some communities don't, and it's not really clear to me. I know one of the concerns has always been space, and obviously this year we have no idea. But maybe just some more information about what the benefits are for some communities.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
I suspect, I hope
Yeah.
that we'll have a much more stable.
Right, and depending on what our projected enrollments
Right.
are for future years.
Right.
But just some of the rationale why other communities do it. Is it just a space thing, they have the space and they do it, or is there some other benefit that we're not seeing? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sure.
Any more discussion on that? All right, all in favor? Actually, yes, Clark, I'm sorry. Ms. Mulroney, can you restate the motion just so we have it on record?
Supporting the superintendent's recommendation for not
That
having.
we
Say
don't
no.
allow school choice in this field.
Okay, all right, thank you, okay.
Wait, I'm sorry, just to
Yes,
fully clarify.
yes,
So a no vote would say that we are not entering school choice. Because you phrased the motion as a negative, so I just want to make
Yes.
sure that we're not talking a yes vote to support your motion or a no vote. You understand my?
It should be a yes vote to support the superintendent's
Okay.
recommendation,
Okay.
not
Very
not to have school choice.
All good?
Oh, yes means no. In this case, yes means no.
Yeah.
Got it.
okay.
Gene, you get that?
All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. The Woburn School Committee has voted to not enroll in school choice for the 21-22 school year. Moving right along, Memorandum of Understanding.
If we suspend the regular order of business and come back to that at the end.
Okay,
Second.
so we'll be moving the Memorandum of Understanding to SEIU. I believe that committee members, we want to discuss that in executive
Because
session,
she
so.
didn't think
Okay, on to subcommittee reports. I'm sorry, we didn't vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's moved to the end of the agenda.
Subcommittee
Okay,
report.
subcommittee reports, Finance Subcommittee, Mrs. Chisholm.
Yes, we did meet on May 3rd at 3:30 here at the conference room at the middle school. In attendance was Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Bob Alcanada, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Bob Story, Patty Buchanan, School Committee members Andrew Lipstick, and myself. And Dr. Wells had submitted his questions on the bills and balancing accounts prior to our meeting. We reviewed the list of bills, and warrant 1 was for $156,396.25. Warrant 2 was $198,088.11. Warrant 3 was $251,203.35. Warrant 4, $1,060,880.59. Warrant 5, $339,313.48. Warrant 6 was for $72,913.25. And you made a motion to bring it to the table with all those warrants. So we have.
I'll make a motion to approve it. Good catch.
Make a motion to approve the
List of bills.
list of bills. Any, we have a second, any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes.
And then we had the balance of accounts that we approved.
I'll make a motion to approve the balance of accounts.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
And we had two journal entries that we had to do that for a clerical error that have been corrected. One was for $23.19, and one was for $11,897.74 that just went into the ESSA grant.
I'll make a motion that we approve those transfers.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
And then we just acknowledge that a budget has been sent to the library and as well as online prior to our first budget meeting we had. And we just spoke about the lunch desk that is now totaling $11,300, and Patty is going to be getting a training on the collection process. This debt is about 40 families, and there's 12 other families that owe between $250 and $500, which is just a work in progress for the time being. And we had a brief discussion on our preschool program, and hopefully there'll be more information on that, and we adjourned at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Chisholm. Any questions for finance, Dr. Wells?
I had a question on the lunch program. Are we offering a full lunch program now that the students are back, or are we just sort of still a restricted lunch program?
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's as full as it has been, but it is more choices than when we were in the hybrid.
And are we offering the other things, the non-traditional lunch supplements?
A la carte?
Yeah,
No.
I know I can get back to you on that.
because
I'm not
that's
sure.
sort of where we've lost money in the past. I think that's,
I don't believe that's
Okay.
being offered this
Yeah.
year.
okay.
Because, candidly, a lot of it is movement in buildings.
Yeah.
And so to try to restrict the,
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to curriculum and data trends, Mr. Lipset.
We have not met.
Okay, moving on to personnel, Mr. Mulrennan.
Yes, Madam Chair, the personnel did meet. I believe Ms. McCall was kind enough to send everybody some minutes from the April 15th meeting. In summary, it was mostly the superintendent and administration introduced some job descriptions, including the IT operations manager, the EL teacher, history coordinator, and a part-time reading interventionist. And I believe the superintendent was asked to send copies of each one of those job descriptions to the school board members. As each of those descriptions came forward to the subcommittee of myself, Ms. Cormier, and Ms. Chisholm, they were acted upon to bring to the full committee for your approval this evening. So at this time, I would ask for a motion to approve 5 job descriptions as presented by the administration on April
I think we
15th.
received them.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to say that I forgot to send them.
Okay. We could, it's not going to hurt. We could,
Yeah.
next
Next
meeting, we can
meeting.
approve it.
That was the most.
I made a note. but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
just- yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Crowley.
Again, when you receive those, again, review them and let Dr. Crowley know if you feel as though there's any necessary changes to those.
Okay.
The meeting was on Thursday, the 15th, here in the conference room. You received the minutes, vote to approve those job descriptions. There was another substitute topic came up, and we're still confused whether the substitute line item is, substitute issue is going to finance or in personnel, but that's for another day. And the meeting adjourned at 4:45. So when you receive those job descriptions from the superintendent, review them, and we'll hopefully approve those at the next meeting. There are no other personnel meetings coming up unless the administration has matters.
Okay, Dr. Wells.
Yeah, so maybe we could just hammer out exactly what the issue is with the substitutes, so we know better what we're going. I think, and Mr. Chisholm, you may want to,
Well, there was some discussion about if we've had substitutes for several years, that they get paid more, maybe on a scale compared to just somebody that walks in off the street the very first year, and then they haven't been willing to move it. And we have substitutes that are in the buildings that are still getting the same pay as somebody that just comes in for a day or two here and there. So just kind of just discuss it, not to, we have substitutes that have been coming for years and show up and do their jobs. You paid the same amount of money as somebody might do it 3 times a month or whatever.
We'll just make a
Just
note
move
for
the
that
thought.
next personnel
Right.
meeting, and we'll get with Ms. Falconer just to see, perhaps set up different states, and Mr. Jim called it, scale or steps, or
Oh, okay.
prioritize them, or seniority, or, I know it's just on occasion, but the pay scale is the pay scale, but it's just, can we have a starting point of a date to begin, start a new category or chart
I mean, we've had some
Personnel-wise.
substitutes that have been
But-
for years, and we just don't want to lose them to another district that may be offering even $20 more a day or $10 more a day is something to somebody.
I think, Madam Chair,
Yes,
I think that really just needs a lot of discussion because,
Yeah.
you know, it has implications. When you set up a pay scale, it usually changes over time and it can have a lot of implications.
Yes.
And, you know, what do we do about custodians? We have many other substitutes that work in the school system, so, you know, and never want to do this in the middle of a fiscal year, you know. This would be something that we'd have to hammer out, and it would, you know, if we're going to do something, do it so when we start a new fiscal year, so the budget can reflect that, so.
Okay, so personnel, Ms. Chisholm will bring her ideas to personnel and see if they come up with a good recommendation for the full committee.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Policy and safety, I believe Mr. Kissel has policies coming off the table.
Yes, a couple of things. So we did meet on 5/6, 3 p.m. by Zoom. Present was myself, Dr. Mike Baldessari, Chair Ellen Crowley, Bob Alcanada, Colleen Cormier, and Pat Chisholm. My minutes are brief, as you can see. There was a lot discussed, and I'm going to let Dr. Baldessari probably touch more on it than me just rambling off on things that he would have more detail on.
All right, so I'll start with the dress code. There was a letter the committee had sent the dress code to the policy subcommittee. Prior to that meeting, I had asked all principals to review their dress code, obviously for microaggressions and other adjustments that may need to be made to the dress code that's in the school handbook. The dress code that exists in the policy subcommittee for the Woburn Public Schools is only missing one word when you compare it to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees reference policy, and that is the appearance of the word guardians. So in sentence 1, it has the word parents, and Woburn stops at parents, and theirs says parents, guardians. So certainly we will be bringing to the committee a revised policy to include the word guardians. The principals did, at the high school and middle school levels, review their dress code policies. I've yet to hear back from the principals at the elementary schools. The high school principal, Jessica Callahan, reviewed her policy. She feels strongly that there are no microaggressions and that it's an accurate reflection of the expectations of the students at Woburn Memorial High School. Both Mr. Nelson and Mr. Quayle met and reviewed their middle school policy, and they both agreed that the policy needed to be adjusted. They proposed that they would change their policy so that it is the exact same as the policy that is at the high school, and that would appear in both of their handbooks. So the handbooks, they would be altered at the Joyce. I believe that they've already gone to print, so we'll have to do some type of a supplement into those handbooks, or a sticker or something like that to reflect the new dress code policy. So in response to the letter that was received, the principals at the middle and high schools have done their work, and we're just waiting to hear back from the elementary folks.
That is JICA, by the way.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Yeah, and then, if there are any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them before I move on.
Mr. Lipset?
Just one quick question. Would it be possible to distribute the high school dress code to the committee members?
Yeah, I can send you, I have everything in an email. I can just email it out to the committee. I have what's in our policy manual, what's in the Massachusetts reference manual, and then I have all of our codes of conduct, dress codes. I can send those out to the committee. And I've even highlighted in yellow any language that pertains directly to what students would be or would not be allowed to wear in schools.
Thank you.
One other, are you going to do DNB?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one
Okay,
more
good.
thing on, so I did talk to Mr. Quayle and Mr. Nelson about, at some point, and you know how we have one student and parent handbook for the elementary schools, but one separate handbook and another handbook for the middle schools. So they agreed that during this school year that they would take time to go through the books, piece by piece, and that hopefully at the end of this 2022 school, 21-22 school year, we could have one handbook that's reflective of both middle schools, so that there's not different expectations depending on the neighborhood or the school that you're. Sorry.
On policy DNB, which is the one you're alluding to be taken off the table, that was tabled for 30 days, which brings up another policy issue coming up after that. But that was March 2nd, 2021. But prior to that, not too much earlier, Jen Judkins, maybe Bob Alconado, there was some concern about what we're about to discuss here.
So
that was supposed to
you
be
were given
taken
a
off.
draft policy of DMB, and I don't know if you handed out the one I gave you before the meeting, Mr. Kitzel.
Yes,
Yeah.
made it around, yeah.
So prior to that, making it to come off the table, Ms. Judkins had met with myself, Mr. Alcanada, the superintendent, made some recommendations for adjustments to that policy. And those adjustments have been agreed upon by Dr. Crowley and certainly myself and Mr. Alcanada. I think they make good sense for the operation of a school district of this size. And what Ms. Judkins recommends is that there would be a separate piece for electronics and books with a value of less than $5,000. In any event, if the disposal of something that's less than $5,000, it's below the 30B, Chapter 30B threshold of $10,000, and that would be throughout the course of the year. So if there was books that were being disposed of, you couldn't do a disposal in September, and then October, and then November, and have those three disposals combined to more than $10,000. So we do have to monitor this, the disposal of these types of items. The reason for that is that the equipment that we're recycling are devices and things that are just no longer supported on our network. They're no longer used. They can't be updated, and actually disposing of them improperly poses a security risk because sometimes they contain data that's, if it's a teacher's old laptop that's antique, the hard drive has to be destroyed in a certain way to ensure that there's no data leakage. The scrap value of some of these things, just to give you an example, of an LCD monitor is actually $1. So getting to $5,000, we would have to dispose 5,000 LCD monitors we don't have 5,000. When you talk about printers and toner, in some cases, if we can't find, places that take these things, sometimes it can cost us money to dispose of some of these things. And so it's kind of a crazy thing to think about that. When it comes down to books, as Jen's going through the libraries and the schools, and some of the books that we have in our libraries really shouldn't be in the hands of kids anymore. The words and the language that are in those books are not acceptable in 2021. And they have, in a lot of cases, they have no value whatsoever. And so some of them are damaged, missing pages, destroyed. Their use is gone. That we would like to be able to dispose of those in accordance with the policy that you have there, without having to go to a vote every couple of weeks with and then cataloging 500 books by name. It would be really, really cumbersome. So we would absolutely, with the books, for any book that does have some value someplace else other than the schools, we would attempt to donate them to More Than Words, and that's the organization that the public library disposes of their goods. So I do recommend that the policy go forward and allow the disposal of those two sets of items at the discretion of the superintendent after it's reviewed by the assistant superintendent and recommended by the technology director, and a log is kept of all of these things.
So someone make a motion?
Yep.
To accept this policy, take it off the table?
Yeah, I'm going to take it off the table first, which I don't think we have done at this point. A motion to take DNB off the table.
Second.
Okay, that motion, all in favor? Aye. 7-0, that motion is, that policy is off the table. Next.
I'm going to make a motion to accept the admin changes to DNB and to adopt it.
Second.
Into our
On the
meeting.
motion?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. If you could just put in that part about maintaining a log of things that are disposed of into the policy, I think that's just a good idea, so if there's any question, we know some. So if somebody says something was disposed of, and then somebody questions, well, did somebody take it home? And then we have a log of that. And then the only other question I had was, is all the money going to the general fund? That's any money that's collected? Because at the back end of the 5,000, you talk about book sales and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, we would have to.
Okay. Well, the possibility could have been it could have gone to funds, principal funds or things like that. That's what I just wanted to clarify. Okay. But all the money would go to the general post fund. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Lipsick?
This is going to be a minute of our lives that we're never getting back. You have one heading here that says surplus items valued at $10,000 or more, and the next one that says surplus items valued at $10,000 or less. If we have a surplus item that's valued at exactly $10,000, we don't know where to put it.
I would consider that to be 10,000 or more.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. As promised, a minute of our lives, we're never getting back.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Just, it's safer to give it the higher level of treatment. Yep.
All right, so Dr. Wells made an amendment to the motion to add in the log. And do I have, all in favor? Aye. That motion passes. This policy has been adopted with Dr. Wells' amendment to add a log of all equipment that has been disposed of. Okay. Mr. Kessel?
Continuing on, we have a strange name next. It's a policy on policy. The question came up in that subcommittee meeting on, we've always had just what we just did. We released it after 30 days. And
It's not what the policy doesn't state anything. The policy that we have is by and large the exact same policy that most districts have across the Commonwealth. I really can only find 3 or 4 districts that had anything different. It doesn't specify 30 days, but it specifies the steps in the process. We had a lengthy discussion about, taking opportunities in policy development to, have the policies be made available to people that may be impacted by them, so that we can get more comment and, opinions and thoughts from people who are stakeholders in our community.
a good example is Jen Judkins getting it, not so much getting a chance, she actually almost didn't get a chance. She just caught it. And so having that steps. Part of the issue was not so much 30 days, and I think that's usually based on 2 meetings, but sometimes it's not. The point was it came up where it needed to be off on 3/2, for example, this last time, and our meeting could have been on 3/1. So we missed by 1 meeting, and it goes forward. So maybe just a question about that. So did you check? You also reached out to City Council?
Yeah,
The city clerk.
as it turns out, I left a message for Mr. Campbell, the city clerk, and then I found out that Mr. Campbell's not the city clerk, that we have a new city clerk, but on the website and on the voicemail,
It wasn't Snooki.
it was still, yeah.
Yeah.
I left a message, I looked at the ordinances for the city of Woburn, there are many policies in there, probably 40 or 50 different mentions of different policies that are stated in there, but there's nothing in the ordinance about how the council goes about adopting a policy. So I will wait to hear from the new city clerk, and I will report back to the
All right. Clark Hagan's his first assignment from the school committee.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, Madam
Okay.
Chair, I guess what do they want to do with the policy?
I think that Mr. Kissel was just informing us that they're working on a policy on policies, and I assume.
I don't think there'll be any changes to it at all.
Okay.
I think that it's going to stay exactly as it's written.
Yeah.
It doesn't say 30
The only thing
days.
that's different is, depending on the policy subcommittee, may say, let's make sure that this is seen this way by this group of people.
I see.
You know, because not everybody watches school committee meetings, or not everybody knows, even like on tonight's agenda, we voted to adopt the DMB policy, but it doesn't even appear on the agenda anyplace. So even if somebody
That's right.
was looking at our agenda, they wouldn't know that we were going to be adopting it tonight. So
Yes.
we just want to be a little bit better about communicating the policy.
So perhaps the policy subcommittee could look at ways in which we publish it online, and then if we're going to take it off the table, we put that on the main agenda.
Right, I think that's probably the main emphasis for the 30 days, is so that it gets on the agenda.
Yeah.
You know, it can be switched to 2 meetings and just automatically go on the agenda for the meeting after
Yeah.
2 meetings. I think that's
Okay.
the easiest way to do it. It's because you can always suspend the policy, you can suspend the rules to do anything you want.
All right.
We're the hardest working, most transparent subcommittee.
Transparent.
Okay,
I'm the most transparent, so we don't do anything.
One thing,
Sure.
Colleen, how many policies do we have?
360.
So the 360 policies, Colleen has created a Google Doc with all 360 of them.
And read them all.
And
Should be
she-
chair.
Yeah.
And so the work has begun of, you know, looking at a lot of these policies, and like right off the bat, there are some glaring things that need to be changed with regard to grammar and words that, I don't even know what to call them. It should be one word, but it's another word.
Ensure?
Yeah. that.
Purgatives
Yeah,
instead of
sure,
prerogative.
sure.
That was my favorite.
Yeah, so the policy
Purgatives?
manual has a lot of things, there are many things in there, and it's hard for us to understand where they came from because they don't have adoption dates, and so there's, you know, they're being looked at, and, you know, you'll be hearing from the policy subcommittee, I think, with a little bit more frequency, maybe 1 or 2 at a time, just to make sure that we're, and it gives everybody a solid understanding about how this is operating.
Dr. Wells.
So, I think we still pay the MASC for, you know, updates on policy, so I think maybe you want to take a look at whether this is a worthwhile endeavor. I know there's been change in leadership at MASC. I'm not sure, you know, if that's affected the quality of it.
Dr. Wells,
Yeah.
the thing is that whenever it happened, this is what the only thing I can fathom, is whenever it happened and those policies were adopted, those became our policies. MASC can't just go in and change a policy without,
No, but I'm saying the language should,
Yeah.
the language is usually the language they give us.
yeah.
And so if if you're having trouble with the language, most of the time it's not some member sitting down and making up the language. We're taking a policy that they've given us. Because that was one of the things we did many years ago, is take out all the old policies that were written by school committee members.
Yeah.
And they were a hodgepodge. But, you know, that's the rationale behind the MASAC. They're supposed to give us the template policy.
They do.
Right.
That's in the reference manual, and we
Right.
can look at it any time.
Right.
Yeah.
And that should have the language that we adopt, and we might add, you know, once, you know, Woburn or something.
Yeah.
That's really all we should be doing for the most part.
So when I do that,
Yeah.
so the process for that is, you know, we look at the policy, we
Yeah.
think about the policy, we talk about the policy, we plus whatever.
Yeah.
And then I have to actually put it into a doc
Right.
and send it to them.
Yeah.
And then they put it in. So I don't know before my involvement with the policy subcommittee how that happened or what happened.
Yeah.
But certainly there are things in there that are great.
Right.
Not all 367 need to be adjusted, but there are just some that,
Yeah.
you know, maybe they're holdovers from one of them was from 1996, and
Yeah.
somebody actually wrote that policy, and it's not the same as what's in the reference manual. So
Yeah.
there are different policies
I
in there
think-
that are reflective of decisions. that-
Probably more reflective that the policy wasn't pruned correctly.
Yeah, maybe.
So
Yeah.
at some point, maybe the school committee can just sort of make all of these adjustments en masse,
Yes.
and have a list of all the policies that we will be amending at one meeting or two. And we'll just make those adjustments at the policies
Yeah, some of them are very
subcommittee's
easy.
recommendation. I mean, I think that's great, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. It's
Yeah,
really
so I have an
important
Excel spreadsheet with notes on it, so we have a list we can work off of, and then I'll send simple grammatical things to Dr. B to send over to MASC, but then I also have notes about things like the AIDS policy that was probably written in 1986.
it needs adjustment. And some people don't even have it in their districts anymore, and some have changed numbers. So there's a few things that need to be just adjusted.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Kissel?
No, that was it. We did adjourn at 4:11.
Now, I heard that you just wanted to change the word guardian in the,
Yes.
Yeah.
so that can go on next meeting,
Yeah.
just to
What I'll
change
do
that one
there
word.
is- Yeah.
Okay.
That's just an amendment, and so I will, I think that, I should add it tonight, but I'll have that for the next meeting.
Okay. So I will remember to put that on the regular agenda, the dress code policy, where we're just changing one word, but still would be good for the community to read it.
Supposed to
Okay.
go one at a time.
Lululemon.
Are we supposed to leave one at a time?
Yeah, I'm next.
Okay.
But your turn.
Oh, he left too. I didn't see that.
Resources not met.
Resources hasn't,
All of a sudden the helicopter came.
Resources hasn't met, you're still waiting on the lineman, and SSA, Ms. Cormier, let's hit it.
We met Friday, May 7th, 2021 at the Joyce Middle School Committee Room. In attendance were myself, Dr. Baldessari, Maureen Ryan, Michael Mulrennan, and Julie Cotton from the CPAC. We were called to order at 9:03 a.m. Dr. Baldessari gave us a quick SSA update as he had a webinar to attend shortly after our meeting. There's a YRBS update. Preliminary results have been received. The data has not been reviewed yet by YRBS, but a PDF will be forthcoming, and it does notably include questions about the impact of COVID-19 on our students. Dr. Baldessari and Adriana met with Social Capital Inc. on May 3rd and discussed a variety of topics. Courtney Young was also in attendance, and as a result of this meeting, Dr. Baldessari and Adriana will be setting up individual meetings with faith-based leaders to share information about Woburn Public Schools and learn about services available for students and families, such as food, clothing, like closets like we have in the schools, but in these buildings, and emergency housing. There was a shared position for equity, diversion, and inclusion. Dr. Baldessari met with representatives from the SEAM Collaborative, Wilmington, Stoneham, Melrose, Lynn, and North Reading districts to discuss a shared position via intermunicipal agreement, a coordinator of equity, diversion, and inclusion. The SEAM Collaborative will oversee insurance, retirement, etc., but the WPS portion will come from the SEAM revolving account. Educational Equity and Access Advisory Council, this is still in process. A draft has been sent to Dr. Crowley. Adriana met with Karen Knoop of Harvard, and they will be meeting monthly if it proceeds. 21st Century Grant application in collaboration with the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club. WPS submitted this grant application, and if funded, this grant would provide summer programming and year-long after-school support for 50 low-income students, grade 1 through 5, from the Malcolm White and Goodyear elementary schools. The YMCA Power Scholars Program will run at the Reeves Elementary School this summer. Students who attend the WPS Summer Enrichment Program will have transportation from the Malcolm White to either the YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club at the end of the day to participate in full-day summer programming. The YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, and Dr. Baldessari are meeting with Lisa from the food service to ascertain food availability for students at the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club summer programs later this week. We will be getting a job description for the curriculum coordinator for guidance and counseling services, which will be adjusted to reflect the integration of social emotional learning and physical well-being. LPAC update, the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for May 18th, and they continue to hope to develop parent leadership. SPED update, as always, robust professional development. Ms. Ryan has ongoing. Ravo, Just Words, Linda Mood Bell, Visualizing, Verbalizing. Melissa Orkin is working on literacy with the Woburn Public Schools. The paras are receiving extensive training. Upcoming, we have Maureen Lissert, hands-on touch training for AAC in person. Bonnie Singer Brain Frames has been completed. We have some upcoming collaboration with Dot Lucci, who's an inclusion expert working with the whole district to foster a more inclusive environment. Google training for Read and Write, working to empower Gen Ed and SPED. Jenny Dunkley with IEP goal writing training and the New England Center for Children's ACE curriculum, and also a goal writing training with Kindle. As far as the budget for SPED, unusually high numbers have moved in recently. Additional RISE classes next year will help. We're planning for increases every year, watching the roster and caseloads very carefully, as Ms. Ryan always does. She's also fostering an environment where educators will have all the tools they need, and she noted that transportation-wise, the North Reading has had a shortage of drivers recently. Extended school year planning is ongoing. Staffing continues to be a struggle, as our teachers do need a break after this year, but she is looking for outside staff and needs to offer remote and in-person per DESI. For the fall, she has a couple goals. Goal 1 is consistency with IEPs across the district with measurable goals. And goal 2 is assessments. Still down 3 school-sized colleges, but looking at what a comprehensive assessment is, and there are trainings in place. And she is expecting an increase in referrals due to being behind from COVID-19. The CPAC met in April. The meeting agenda was changed to discuss budgetary questions, but on Wednesday, the 12th at 6 p.m., they will have the, I don't know what they're called now, Handicapped and Disability Commission for the city. Joe Flaherty will be in attendance to answer questions and discuss opportunities for collaboration in the city with the CPAC.
I'm sorry, what date was that?
Wednesday, the 12th, at 6 p. And we adjourned at 10:32 a.m.
Thank you. Yeah. Dr. Wells.
The SEAM revolving account, is that our account, or is
Yes.
it? And so, do we have an amount, how much we're going to be paying out of that for this position?
Yeah, it's a cost share with
Yeah.
5 other districts. I think it's 18 to 20,000 per district is the budgeted amount. We have
Approximately $210,000.
$210,000 in the,
So what, could you explain what we use the SEAM revolving account for?
We haven't used it for much this year.
Yeah.
I don't know what it has been used for in the past, but we could use it to pay, for example, tuition at SEAM Collaborative. We can use it for this.
How do we get money in, how does money get into the SEAM collaborative revolving account?
Money has been coming in the past year in that we have a Wilmington student, I believe, that is here in Woburn, and we're billing Wilmington Public Schools.
Mhm.
So that has been the primary way this year, this fiscal year, that money has come into that account.
So, I don't know, maybe I've heard about it over the years, but not really. Could we have that like sort of as a standing item at finance then? Just sort of, or like once every 6 months, just to follow what's happening with that account?
The SEAM revolving?
SEAM revolving,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And regarding that position, what's the anticipation, like, I'm trying to figure out how they're going to be involved in Woburn. Like, what's the goal of the position?
So I think I'm going to defer to Wendy
Or you can have we can have a presentation another time, that would be better.
Yeah.
I know a lot of, like.
I mean, the quick version is that it's a position that a lot of districts are doing
Right, that's what I
independently.
mean.
And we wanted to put our toe in the water.
Okay.
We do share a coach with other districts as it
That's my next
understanding UDL, right?
Yeah, it's a UDL coach.
We have a UDL coach that-
Pat's been with us a few years. We share, cost-share her with other districts
Right.
as well.
Okay.
And that's been effective.
Okay.
But it's just kind of a way to
Right.
test to see
Okay.
if it's a position.
It doesn't have to be right, maybe they hire what's the goal of the position?
Right.
What do we anticipate their involvement will be in Woburn, so we have a better
Sure.
understanding?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be right away.
Yeah.
And the other question was inclusion activity, you had mentioned.
The council?
No, I think there was some kind of training, something towards the tail end of your minutes.
Oh, from Ms. Ryan. Ms.
Somebody
Ryan
was
had-
doing an inclusion activity training. I don't know, it was an outside, might have been who Wendy was, I don't know.
Yeah.
So what was that sort of, who did they present to, or?
I think that's if I'm not mistaken, I think that's for next year.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Dot Lucci is a renowned expert in autism.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was my.
Okay, so that's what it's
featured
about,
item.
It's a big
autism, I didn't
get.
get that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Ms. Cormier? Yes, Ms. Mulrennan?
More of a comment. I may have missed the beginning calling. I had to go steal a cough drop, so thank you for that. Mike also presented us that morning with a nice little document here about the ongoing after-school and summer programs that, if you don't mind sharing with other school board members, like, it's very informative, and you'd be happy to find out what's going on in the district over the summer months to see these kids being active and still, getting a little bit of programming across the city. So, great little piece of information, so thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving on to future agenda items, I have the job descriptions, summer programming. We should,
Yep.
committee should hear about that. And then graduation. And the policies that Mr. Kissel brings from the subcommittee will be put on as a regular item. Anything else, just on the top of your head, if not?
I think I saw that the federal government is going to start releasing the money. And so as soon as that finds out, I really want that vote on the, plan to have a review of our facilities instituted. So as soon as we find out that we got the funds, have on the agenda so we can vote to approve the feasibility, not the feasibility,
okay.
or the looking at the building structures and stuff. I don't know what's the feasibility or an assessment.
600,000?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
that's just to have it on the radar, so when it
Of
happens.
course, thank you.
So then my subcommittee can meet about the Wyman once that's done.
You'll finally meet.
Okay. All right.
What are you doing about the park over at the road?
Upcoming events, we already talked about graduation. Anyone have any upcoming events?
Yeah, actually, there's did you just say the Herald, they're having a meeting this week?
Yeah, Jeff Dillon, well, he through, I don't know where, I got it through Jeff Dillon.
So,
That's a city thing.
Yeah, the city.
They're talking about the use of the open space at the former Herald School.
Yes.
And that's on May
Saturday, 15th, from 10 to 12, and there are time slots to sign up for if you email Rory
Discussing beach.
at the rec department.
Okay. I don't have any correspondence for us tonight,
Sorry, Madam Chair,
members.
can I just add one more, or
course.
potentially add one more? Dr. Baldessari, do you want to talk a little bit at all about the upcoming Juneteenth events? I don't know the degree to which those can be discussed in terms of salary.
Yeah, so we particularly it was interesting when we met with segregating folks from Social Capital Inc. It came up and there was some curiosity in the community for what we're doing for Juneteenth. And I call it a work in progress right now. There's certainly some proposals and ideas came in. I know that my last conversation with Courtney, she had mentioned, and I wish she was still here, that maybe even the potential of having some of our students from the Embrace Club, be involved in the types of activities that we're going to do. So I'll put a TBD on it, and we'll be back with more information.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay. Like I said, we didn't get any correspondence, members, and I will accept a motion to go into executive session.
Madam Chairman, I guess one question is how much longer do we have to maintain the governor's, restrictions and so forth for our committee meetings? It would be easier for everybody, including you, if people, we could go back. I don't know what the deal is.
What restrictions are you?
Well, we're having people communicate with you if they want to talk as opposed to normally.
Oh, no, I can just take that off. I'm just doing it because I didn't want people to be sitting around.
My table was moved.
No,
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
know
the
whether,
routine. I can always
I don't know
touch
whether we can just open, people can just come to the meetings. That's, I guess, the question. Are we open?
Well, the only restriction we have right now is that I just ask people to give us a heads up if they want to do public comment, but we can just go back to regular public comment.
I
door's open.
don't know, unless the superintendent finds any reason.
No, I think it's fine. We just need to make sure people are wearing masks
Right.
3 feet apart,
Yeah.
the same way
Yeah.
students would be.
Right.
Probably shift those tables so they can walk.
Well, yeah.
And that
away
would
from you
mean that
guys.
we could just also allow public spectators, not
Right,
just
that's
public
what I'm saying,
comment.
yeah,
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so.
Pack the house again.
I
Or
think,
maybe we can talk about it for starting, if it's towards the end, think about it for September, the first meeting in September.
okay.
That way there's a little planning time.
I imagine the public probably likes the live streaming, so I guess if we allow people to come here and simultaneously watch us in person, what happens to the live streaming piece? That's the only.
I think that's not under our control though, is it?
No, we set that up. I have this wired so we could do live
We
streaming.
can do that, yeah, so why don't we think about how we wanted, starting with the first meeting in September.
Sure. Okay, great. So I'll accept a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of strategy, negotiations, and collective bargaining with respect to SEIU. We do have a proposal from SEIU that I believe the school committee wants to discuss in executive session. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion. Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Chisholm.
Yes.
Ms. Cormier.
Yes.
Mr. Lipset.
Yes.
Mr. Kissel.
Yes.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Yes.
Dr. Wells.
Yes.
Ms. Crowley.
Yes. Okay, could the public please clear the room?
I'll have them vote single file.
What is